The wind was sharp that afternoon, whipping my scarf against my face as we stood at the overlook. The canyon stretched endlessly below us, the rocks glinting cruel in the sun. I never thought my life would end here. Not like this. Not by the hands of the boy I raised. "Take in the view, Mom," my son Daniel said, his voice too sweet, too deliberate. His wife, Clara, leaned against the rail, her manicured fingers tapping her phone like she wasn't part of the play. My husband, George, gripped my hand harder than usual. He had been tense all morning, as if he knew something I didn't. "You don't get chances like this often," Daniel continued, his grin wide but empty. "The world at your feet, the wind in your face. A moment you'll never forget. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." Then, before I could speak, before I could even blink, his palms pressed against my chest. Hard. I gasped as the ground vanished beneath me. My body plummeted, my scream torn away by the wind. George's hand snatched mine midair, pulling me into him as we tumbled down the steep, jagged slope. The rocks ripped at my arms. The world spun, but somehow, God help us, we didn't hit the bottom. We landed hard on a ledge, hidden from above, battered but alive. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My ribs burned, my palms bled. Above us, Daniel's voice cut through the air. "Finally, the house, the savings, everything. It's ours now." His laughter mingled with Clara's shrill giggle. George turned to me, his face pale, lips trembling. He pressed his mouth close to my ear and whispered, "Pretend we're dead." My heart hammered so loudly I thought they'd hear it from above. We lay still, our bodies sprawled like lifeless dolls on the rocks, while Daniel leaned over the edge, squinting down. I closed my eyes, praying he wouldn't notice the rise and fall of my chest. After what felt like an eternity, his footsteps retreated. Clara's voice floated back. "We should go before someone sees. Police will believe it was an accident." George's fingers tightened around mine, his grip telling me more than words could. He wasn't going to let this go. Not now. Not ever. Minutes dragged. My head throbbed, but my fury burned hotter than the pain. My own son, the boy I once rocked to sleep, the boy I fed when I had nothing left for myself, had pushed me off a cliff for money, for wood and stone and numbers in a bank. And he thought we were gone, but we were very much alive. And what came next, Daniel would never see coming. The ledge beneath us was narrow, sharp stones biting into my back as I tried to steady my breathing. My husband George whispered again, "Don't move." His hand pressed against my wrist, keeping me still. I could hear Daniel and Clara's footsteps crunching against the gravel above, their laughter cutting through the cold air like knives. "Can you believe how easy it was?" Clara's voice floated down. "She didn't even fight, just one shove." Daniel chuckled. "I told you, they were old, brittle. No way they'd survive that fall. By the time anyone finds them, the inheritance will already be ours." Their words made bile rise in my throat. I had spent 76 years on this earth, raising that boy, patching his knees when he scraped them, selling my jewelry to pay his tuition, and here he was bragging about my death like it was a business deal. George leaned close, his whisper ragged. "We wait, then we climb." His knuckles were bleeding, his breathing shallow, but his eyes had fire in them. He wasn't broken. Neither was I. We stayed motionless as the sky dimmed. After a while, I heard an engine turn over, tires skidding on gravel. Their car pulled away. Only then did George move, dragging himself up the ledge with slow, painful grunts. I followed, my knees shaking, but anger steadied me. Inch by inch, fingers digging into rock, I clawed my way back up until the top of the cliff came into view. Just as I pulled myself over, headlights flashed across the road. Sirens wailed in the distance. My heart lurched. Someone must have seen us fall, or perhaps Daniel, in his eagerness to cover his tracks, had spun some story to the police. The squad car screeched to a stop, dust curling up into the night sky. 2 officers jumped out, flashlights sweeping the ground. Daniel was there too, his arm draped over Clara's shoulders, fake tears streaming down his cheeks. "Officer!" he cried, voice thick with performance. "It was an accident. My parents, they slipped. They fell." Clara pressed a tissue to her face, sniffing dramatically. "We tried to grab them, but it was too late." I almost laughed. Too late. If only they knew. George's hand closed around mine again, keeping me grounded. "Not yet," he whispered. "Let them dig their hole deeper." The officers nodded gravely, pulling ropes and flashlights from their car. They leaned over the cliff, peering into the shadows where we had lain minutes earlier. "Nothing but rocks down there," one said. "We'll have to send a team in daylight." "Looks steep." Daniel wailed louder, clutching his chest as though grief had hollowed him out. My parents, gone, and right before the will was to be finalized. How will I even— "Will?" one officer interrupted. "You mentioned a will?" Daniel blinked, caught for a split second, then nodded. "Yes, I mean, they had everything set. I'll take care of the paperwork. They'd have wanted me to." Clara squeezed his arm, whispering, "Careful." George's lips curved in the faintest smile. We weren't just alive, we were watching, listening, gathering every word. The officers eventually guided Daniel and Clara back to their car, promising to return at dawn with climbing gear. Their sirens faded into the distance, leaving only the whistle of the canyon wind. I turned to George, my body trembling with exhaustion, but my mind sharp. "He wanted us dead," I whispered, voice cracking. "Our own son. For wood. For money." George nodded grimly. "And he thinks he's won." We limped back toward the hidden trail we'd once shown Daniel as a child, the one he'd long forgotten. It led us to the old service road, far from the main entrance where the police would return. We walked in silence, every step searing, until the lights of a small cabin appeared in the distance, a ranger's post we had visited years ago. The ranger's eyes widened when he saw us stumble in, bloodied, torn, but breathing. "Good Lord, they said you fell." "We did," George rasped, "but we're not gone, not yet." He gave us blankets, water, a place to sit. My bones ached, but anger kept me warm. Daniel thought the world was his now. He thought we were broken bones at the bottom of a canyon. He thought he'd spend the inheritance before the dirt even settled over our graves. But he had no idea we were alive. And no idea that the people he pushed would become the very hands to drag him down. Morning light crept through the ranger's dusty window, the kind of pale dawn that makes everything look ghostly. My body screamed with bruises, but the fire in my chest burned brighter than any pain. George sat across from me at the wooden table, wrapping his bloodied hand in gauze the ranger had given him. His jaw was tight, his eyes colder than I'd seen in our 50 years together. "We have two choices," he said softly. "We crawl back into their arms like broken parents, or we make them regret the day they ever pushed us." There was no choice at all. My son had declared dead. We would make him live with the consequences. By mid-morning, the police returned to the canyon with ropes and helmets. From the shadows of the ranger's cabin, George and I watched their cars roll up. Daniel was there again, dressed in dark glasses, putting on his best impression of a grieving son. Clara clung to his side, whispering rehearsed sobs. "Accidents happen," Daniel told the officers, his voice carrying across the rocks. "But at least they lived full lives. Now we'll carry their legacy." The lies rolled so easily off his tongue. I wondered how many he had told me over the years that I never caught. My heart clenched, but I stayed hidden. The rangers climbed down the cliff, searching. When they called back up that no bodies were found, Daniel's face twitched, but he quickly plastered it with fake grief. "Animals must have taken them," Clara muttered, clutching her chest dramatically. "God rest their souls." The officers wrote in their notebooks, suspicious but not enough to press further. They promised to file a report, then packed up their gear. Daniel and Clara drove away, hand in hand, whispering about the future that was now theirs. But it wasn't. That night, George and I made our move. With the rangers' help, we were driven into town. We didn't go home, not yet. Instead, we sat quietly at the back of the church where Daniel and Clara had arranged a memorial service. The church bells rang as guests arrived, all black suits and sympathetic murmurs. At the front, a giant photo of George and me smiled back at the crowd. My own face stared from the frame, already buried by their words. Daniel stood at the podium, clearing his throat theatrically. "My parents were difficult," he began, pretending to choke up. "But they loved us in their own way. Now they've left us, with everything they worked for. Their home, their savings, their—" His words stuck when the heavy oak doors creaked open. Every head turned. Gasps filled the air. And there we were. George's arm looped around mine, steadying me as we stepped inside. My dress was torn at the hem, my hands still scraped raw, but I walked tall. My heart pounded as I met Daniel's eyes. He went pale, his lips parting as though he'd seen the devil himself. Clara dropped her tissue, her knees buckling. You're dead," Daniel stammered. "No," George's voice thundered across the church. "We're very much alive, and we heard everything." The crowd erupted into whispers, confusion rippling through the pews. I moved forward, every step echoing like a drumbeat. "You stood there," I said, my voice sharp, "and told these people about our accident. You claimed our legacy as yours before the dirt was even on our bones. You laughed when you pushed us." Daniel shook his head violently. "It was an accident. They slipped. I tried to—" "Don't you dare lie again," my voice cut like glass. "I heard you. Finally, you said. The house, the savings, everything, it's ours now." The air thickened. Clara looked around wildly, seeking someone to side with her, but every pair of eyes was fixed on them. George reached into his pocket and pulled out the ranger's small recorder, the one he had turned on when we staggered into that cabin. He pressed play. From the speakers, Daniel's voice blared, cruel and unfiltered. "She didn't even fight. Just one shove. They were old, brittle. By the time anyone finds them, the inheritance will already be ours." The church froze. Guests shifted uncomfortably, horror dawning on their faces. Daniel lunged forward, trying to grab the device, but George stepped back, his stance unshakable. "You tried to bury us," he said calmly. "Now it's your turn." The police, already wary from their investigation, were standing in the back of the church that day. When they heard the recording, they didn't hesitate. They stepped forward, their voices loud and clear. "Daniel Carter, you're under arrest." Clara screamed as they pulled his arms behind his back. He twisted, his eyes wide, desperate, locking onto me. "Mom, please, you can't let them do this." I stepped closer, my face inches from his. "You told me the best gift I could give you was my death. Consider this my gift in return." His knees buckled as they dragged him out, the crowd watching in stunned silence. Clara followed, her pleas useless, her face streaked with tears. When the doors slammed shut behind them, I finally let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. George took my hand, his fingers warm, steady. We walked to the front of the church, past the photo of ourselves they had propped up like trophies of their greed. I stared at that smiling picture, the one meant to eulogize me, and whispered to the room, "Don't ever mistake silence for weakness. Some of us wait, and then we strike." The whispers grew louder. Some clapped, others just stared, but no one looked at me the same way again. And my son? He wanted an inheritance. Instead, he inherited chains. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.